What's up, my beautiful people? Exile451 here with another daily dose of Reddit Hope and Happy, and I hope you got your 20-sided die, because today we're going into r/AskReddit for some hilarious stories from Dungeons & Dragons. So, let's get to it. Okay, so the question was, D&D Dungeon Masters of Reddit, what is the most useless magical item you've ever given your party, and how did they use it? And I know this might be a little niche, but even if you don't play D&D, I promise you will get most of these. We were playing through a pre-made campaign. At one point, the players retrieve a magical artifact, which turns out to be an Orb of Control Dragons. It does exactly what you would expect. In theory, it could have been very useful. Except no dragons were showing up in the campaign, so it was basically useless. It did, however, lead to a running gag where our most paranoid player kept attempting to control dragon random NPCs to see if they were secretly dragons in disguise. Oh, I can picture that now, and that would get so annoying so quickly. Follow-ups on that, though. Running gags are the best, though. They are. Early on into one of my group's campaign, we set up camp for the night and were eating. The warrior had made some cold porridge, yuck, in a pot right as we were getting surprise ambushed. How did he react? He put the pot on his head, on which he had no helmet. He wasn't the brightest anyways, and negotiated a +1 armor buff for a trade-off debuff in his hit chance, -2. We won the fight, and his character became convinced the helmet had saved him, as it had actually blocked a headshot, and kept putting it on. There were also many jokes had about him having some oats in his hair. A key that only opens refrigerator doors. Industrial era setting campaign. Refrigerators are never locked. Now, it would have been really helpful for this side quest, but instead, my party chose to stab the woman who gave it to them. So she gives you a useless key, and instead of just being mad, you stab her. Seems like a bit of a disproportionate reaction, but it's D&D. Once my party got a huge, beautiful magic sword, which was improperly identified as a sword of ogre slaying. Instead, it was a cursed sword of ogre saying. Whoever wielded it would only be able to yell ogre at things. Several adventures later, they were attempting to catch a thief who was evading them. They came up with this brilliant idea of setting the sword as bait, and just going about their business. Sure enough, sometime later, they heard ogre, ogre, ogre ring up through the town, and they caught him without consequence. Human ingenuity is certainly amazing. You can find the most clever uses for things. Follow up on that one, though, that made me nearly die laughing. It's all ogre for that guy. Oh, puns. When one of my players found a magic ring in the wreckage of a burnt wagon, he provisionally identified it as a ring of invulnerability. He spends most of the rest of the session swanning about like he's invincible until he is confronted by a veritable army of goblins. Combat immediately ensues, and to his surprise, he is quickly felled by javelins and scimitars. As he lays there bleeding out in the dirt, he notices that the ring is completely undamaged. So the ring was invulnerable, and not him. So, totally ADD thing here, but that reminds me of back in the days when I used to play Diablo 2. They had runes that did different things, and if you lined them up in a rune word, you'd get different bonuses. And, they also had gems that did similar things and whatnot that you could slot into weapons or armor and whatnot. You could do that with both gems and runes. There was one rune that was super sought after because it made an item indestructible. I want to say it was like Zod was the name of it. Anyway, so this one genius decided to put a Zod rune inside of a bow, which, doesn't sound too bad, except for the fact that bows were the one item in the game which were naturally indestructible. So he basically took the most valuable rune in the game and wasted it, because you couldn't take it off. And people were just like, dude, why? Some people. A random loot generator once gave my party a cursed ring of protection +1. The curse was that it wasn't actually a ring of protection, and did nothing except delude the wearer into thinking it was. Fun times. I was quite fond of the Staff of Disintegration that turned into ashes if you used it. Well, that's inconvenient. I gave one of the characters a magical cloak that billows on command even if there's no wind. He used it to make dramatic entrances. Okay, now I have to stipulate, that is not a useless item. Being able to have hero wind behind you no matter where you are, I mean, dude, come on. How awesome is that? Even if it doesn't do anything for your character, dramatic entrances can say a lot. An orb that states the closest magical item to it. It always states itself. Was playing a campaign on a tropical island type of place, and an enemy knocked my weapon off a cliff, so I used a coconut as an improvised weapon. Crit with that thing 4 times in a row, and decided to keep it for last hitting people. Was a barbarian, and the DM liked the coconut last hitting so much, he had me keep track of the kills, and I eventually had a +3 coconut that on a crit would ricochet until it didn't kill something. So basically, he gave me a coconut of great potential. I mean, I only understand about half of that, but the image of a coconut being used as a means by which to attack someone, and then it ricocheting, killing multiple people in the same room. I find that to be very comical. Not a D&D dungeon master, but I played Neuroshima. It's a post-apocalyptic RPG system. Fallout/Mad Max climates. One guy was so freaking stubborn searching one abandoned building that I finally gave him a potato. The dude carved it into the shape of a hand grenade and painted it green. Then he used it in negotiation with some NPCs, pretending that he was insane and bluffing that he's gonna blow them all up with himself. Well, I was really impressed and proud of the creativeness of this player. Yeah, I mean, you gotta admit, that's that's quite an ingenious way to use a potato. I had a magical red rubber duck. Gave it to the party as a joke item because they kept asking for weird crap. Not one of them chose to identify it. It was an artifact-level rubber duck. Once it was part of your inventory, it would never leave unless it wanted to. It had wisdom and intelligence of 28, sentience, and could be attuned. Nobody learned that it was probably the most powerful item in my game. I could just see it right now. The rubber duck of doom! As it quacks its way across the land, wreaking havoc and fear into all those who stand in front of it. You know better than to pick up a duck in a dungeon. Gave my party a sash of swimming. See retextured aquatic cummerbund. They put it on the donkey pulling their wagon and promptly forgot about it. I haven't though. 2 years later, I haven't. Oh, that reveal is going to be glorious, I am sure. Not a DM, but a player with cheeky DMs. The Rock of Gravity Detection. It's literally just a stone you hold up and let go of. If it falls, congratulations, you've detected gravity. They found a wand that creates a random and unique lock that incorporates itself into the substance it's used on. So it might make a suspicious recess in a stone wall or a brass-plated keyhole on a wooden door. If probed with lockpicks, you would encounter moving tumblers or some other appropriate but unique locking mechanism. The lock was still completely non-functional though. It didn't magically create a compartment, it just made a lock. Even if you used it on a desk drawer, it never made a latch or bolt. So the drawer would open perfectly fine, while having a useless metal cylinder with tumblers that weren't connected to anything. If you successfully picked the lock, it always felt like a real lock despite lacking the physical pieces, it would make a soft chiming noise and the lock would evaporate. The wand was a training tool used by a famous locksmith to challenge himself and his students. It had no practical application at all outside of that profession. It ended up being used by the druid, who had ranks in use magic device, don't ask, to constantly mess with the rogue. The druid would take every opportunity to wild shape into a small critter good for scouting and then place fake locks anywhere the rogue might conceivably try to use the search skill. The rogue's increasing paranoia whenever he found a lock and his overblown promises of vengeance every time a random hole in a floorboard wasted a minute of his time and chimed at him was a pretty good gag. It turned a little sour when the druid made an extra lock and an honest-to-goodness treasure chest. The rogue rolled a natural 20 to pick the first lock and got a chiming noise. Then he rolled a 3 and triggered an energy-draining trap that permanently lost him 5 HP. After that, the rogue stole every wand that the druid had in the middle of the night and threw them all into a bottomless pit in the Underdark. Oh, you gotta love when players are trolling each other like that. That's brilliant. In a game I'm currently in, our DM gave us a flask of endless water. It can produce water in a trickle, a flood, or deluge that shoots 30 gallons of water in one turn. Our cleric had just fallen from a bridge over a chasm, and through clever BSing, our sorcerer had managed to catch the falling cleric with a web spell. As we are all racking our brains to figure out a way to save them, our cleric pulls out the flask and uses the water cannon mode to propel herself back onto the bridge using the web strands as a fulcrum. That's pretty smart. That's really ingenious. Follow up on that one though. You think that's bad? I had to literally ban the 3.5 spell Create Water because my entire party rolled classes that could learn it. The default is Cleric/Druid, but there's books that award it to Arcane casters too. And solved everything with that stupid cantrip. It would blow your mind how many puzzles, traps, combat encounters, and social situations can be solved by liberal application of magic water. Someone refuses to talk? Waterboard them. Pressure plates might be down this hallway? Set them off at a distance with a flood. There's a locked anything? Break it by dropping water from a height. Ambushed? Turn the road to mud and run away. Setting an ambush? Turn the road to mud and wait. Starving? You can survive for 10 days on just water. Need to escape a conversation? A pipe bursts and the building floods. The list goes on. Turns out physicists and engineers can turn a cantrip into the power equivalent of a 9th level spell given enough thought. I'll be honest, I've never played Dungeons & Dragons. I've always wanted to. I now want to even more just to do this. And since I usually play a druid in WoW, it makes total sense. That is so good though. We were playing a campaign with custom items we all put in. They were reasonable, and someone put in a staff that whenever someone used it, it turned the user into a potato. They could still move and turn themselves back, but that was about it. So we were in a dungeon that was rather small. Our 6-foot barbarian was angry that he had a debuff, but there was a small slit in the wall that I hid an item behind, and our magic man went poof and rolled into the slit and got a key for a chest at the end of the dungeon. So, yeah. My infamous horn of resounding quacks was a hit. Summoned any duck within a half-mile radius of the person using it. The party never went hungry after that. Follow-ups on that though. Poor ducks. If you're an evil DM, you can get them used to it so they never bring food anymore and then put them in a duckless place. Have fun starving, boys. Depends on how you read it. Summon, as in any duck within half a mile is summoned to you, there need to be ducks, or summon, within a half a mile radius around you, a duck is randomly summoned. If there were no ducks before, there is one now. It might be out of your sight, quacking and standing behind some rocks at a quarter mile away, but it's there nonetheless. Congratulations, the ethereal plane, the 7th layer of hell, and the deadly ruins of the great arch-wizard Asgordon are now infested with ducks because your stupid bard kept blowing the horn every 3 seconds. I can just picture it. Millions of ducks just in the 7th layer of hell. Not completely useless, but a weird chain of effects nonetheless. So, this is Pathfinder. I joined the campaign in progress as a dwarven ranger with a hit list and the social skills of a block of wood. The party included a halfling rogue whose impromptu resurrection made him an unwilling tool of Sarenrai, a paladin of Sarenrai with a penchant for moral loopholes, and an impulsive sorcerer who is probably the best example of chaotic neutral I've ever seen. When I say he's CN, I mean it. At one point, he attempted to recruit a band of adventurers to help us fight an army of demons. He immediately gave a rousing speech at the local tavern establishment of the Drunken God, leading to a chain of events that ended with a riot, 2 sunken ships, and an accidental guard kidnapping. So anyway, long story short, we are out in the wilderness hunting down his long-lost father, who is being dragged through the wilderness by a Dullahan servant of the Dark Lord who is using some bad mojo to bring back undead dragons. I track the Dullahan and we sneak up on the camp in the middle of this freezing cold wilderness. We start preparing ourselves and Ned, the chaotic neutral sorcerer, pulls out the Mask of the Skull. For the uninitiated, it's a skull mask that can fly off and eat an enemy's face. A Dullahan, on the other hand, has no actual head, instead relying on the stolen heads strapped to his chest. The table all groans at the mere mention of the mask. People exacerbatedly tell him to not use the mask. He ignores them and puts it on. Rowan, our less than moral paladin, finally pipes up. You know what? Screw it. I use Detect Evil. Silence. The DM and Ned exchange looks. Then he gently shuts his DM book, folds his hands, and takes a breath. You detect evil. We all stop, confused. What? Ned throws his hands up. Look guys, I can explain. You remember that staff that we found a few weeks into the campaign that was hungry for blood and I kept feeding it? Okay, so it turns out that was a ritual to switch places with the being imprisoned inside. My name is actually Ilfast. I'm a 1,000-year-old elf sorcerer who was imprisoned by the Dark Lord before his turn to evil. My imprisonment has driven me quite evil. Chaos ensues. Rowan is trying to find a way to not kill him and still keep his oath. Nyx, the rogue, is nervously picking at one of her many daggers, and I'm standing there with my magic automatic crossbow and giant wolf trying to figure out what the heck is going on. As it turns out, I never actually met Ned. The entire time we were adventuring together, Ned was trapped in the staff. It was an awkward introduction after everything was sorted out, and now Ned and Ilfast tend to swap places randomly while forgetting to tell us. Though both are so chaotic, it's pretty hard for us to tell. So yeah, the item wasn't exactly useless, and we were all much too powerful to need it, but its use directly led to a revelation that completely changed the story that we had been adventuring through for the past few weeks. Well, it wouldn't be D&D unless there was quite a curveball. Oh my gosh, that's that's brilliant though. Oh my gosh. I need to play. I need to find a group around here. There's more funny or uplifting AskReddit content in the playlist link on your left, or if you want to see what YouTube thinks would be best for you, go ahead and click the link on the right. Now you guys, stay safe, stay healthy, stay inside if you're supposed to. I will see you all tomorrow. Until then, I'm Exile451. Stay beautiful, people.